All right, guys, we're going to get this started here. I don't want to bite in too much into the presentation time, but I do want to thank you for coming here and welcome to the 2019 WIFMA annual conference. I know for some of you, it was a long drive, so I can definitely appreciate that. And again, thank you for taking the time out. I'm sure your organizations, you have to leave them behind, but hopefully you can take something that you can take away, and that will benefit your organizations. We have a pretty good program set up for you guys. Leslie, she's going to kick it off. We also have Maria Redmond from the Office of Energy and Innovation. She's also going to be presenting. We're going to take a lunch break. Todd, who, our gracious host, he's been doing a great job. He suggested a catering place, so hopefully the food is going to be good for that. After that, we're going to have a couple more presentations. One of them is going to be from Patrick Lynn. He's going to be talking about case studies. And then the other presentation is going to be from Randy Marquardt, and he's going to be talking about the building envelope. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Leslie. Leslie's been great. She's been working with Waukesha County for closing in on a year now, and she has a great team behind her. They've helped us out immensely with our water management program. I know there's been some talk and some confusion. That CMS memo came out saying that you have to have these water management programs in place if you have a healthcare facility. And I invited Leslie to talk here. She's very knowledgeable when it comes to this area, and I'll let her talk a little bit more about it. So
thanks, Javier.
Yep, no problem. Thank you.
Right. So, like Javier mentioned, my name is Leslie Reading. I'm an area manager with Phygenics. And here I also have Jessica Jensen. Maybe some of you have met her already. She's an account manager with Phygenics and day 4 on the job. So we're happy to have her and maybe she could meet you all. But before we dive in, just a very brief background. So I've been with Phygenics for about 5 years now. Started with the company analyzing water samples in our lab in Warrenville, Illinois. And I've been a field account manager for about 4.5 years. So here. So before we get started, and again, I know I've talked to many of you just now at the expo and at the networking event last night, but before we dive in, and one thing too, I encourage questions. If anyone has any questions along the way, raise your hand, interrupt me. I'd love to hear your questions. So this is, I hope it doesn't feel like a 1 hour long and actually make it about 40 minutes presentation. This is an open forum, so really ask away. Specific facility-related questions, or maybe general questions about CMS, Joint Commission, DNV, the DNR. I know we had an earlier kind of conversation about DNR and Safe Drinking Water Act. No questions is stupid questions, so please raise your hand. So before we get started, had anyone heard of Phygenics before? You can raise your hand. That's okay if not. Nope. Okay. Great. So Phygenics, our core competency is water management programs. So we intentionally don't sell chemicals, remediation devices, or treatment systems like some of you might have UV or chlorine dioxide or copper silver, any of those systems, or perhaps for your cooling towers, your biocides. We don't sell any of that. And that's intentional so that we can be independent and provide defensible, data-driven, third-party managed water management programs that optimize the total cost and improve both safety and efficiency of potable and utility water. Now, any questions with that so far? Or maybe anyone want to shout out and give some examples of what those might be, or maybe sources of what could be a risk in building water systems?
The cooling towers have often been spoken about,
Yeah.
If you release spray into the air, and if it gets sucked into the intakes, it can then spread Legionella. So that's been a talk, over the years that I've been in the business. So
Yeah.
that's one of the areas.
Yep, that's an excellent example, Javier. So yeah, cooling towers. We'll be talking a little bit about those other potable fixtures too. Right. So here's what we had planned to cover today. While recognizing that many of us here are not microbiologists, we're going to first go over a very high-level overview of what Legionella bacteria is and how that translates to Legionnaire's disease. Then we'll talk about how to prevent that. So I'm not here to say, here's all these scary hazards that could be in the built-in environment, and now go figure it out. This is really going to be an education about the hazards and what, understanding Legionnaire's disease and caused by Legionella bacteria, but then also getting those tools in place for you all to bring back to your facility, so you've got a starting ground and can take those principles and perhaps form your own water management team, or begin the process to meet CMS requirements. So does this sound okay to everyone so far, or any other expectations or topics that anyone came with intention to cover today? Is that okay? I mean, that's okay. Crickets are fine. Just want to make sure everyone's got a chance to speak up. So this is a statistic actually from the CMS memo. And how many of you received the CMS memo at your facility? Maybe your healthcare, or maybe your infection preventionist or risk manager? Oh, you're talking about the CDC maybe?
No, it's CTC is our community treatment center. It's got a nursing home,
Okay,
free neighborhoods.
got it. Yeah, June, maybe other departments have received it. And you may or may not know this information, but if your facility receives reimbursement from the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, then, CTC again? Oh, okay. So if you receive reimbursement from the Centers of Medicaid and Medicare Services, as of June of 2017, you have to have a water management program. Lots of ways to do that. We're going to be going over 2 standards, ASHRAE 188, it's called Minimizing Legionellosis Risk, and the CDC Toolkit for Legionella. So ASHRAE tells you what to do, CDC tells you how to do it, and it's up to you to implement. We're going to, through the second section of this presentation, we're going to give you the tools, share all the secrets of what the principles are behind it, following those 2 industry guidance documents. So what you can see here is that, for those that reference assisted living or long-term care, this is percentage of Legionella outbreaks associated with these facilities. So it's hard to see, but the long-term care is 19%. So 15% are hospitals, and then the other 66% are all other buildings. So this could include your county courthouses, jails, commercial buildings, hospitality is a large one that Legionnaire's disease has been associated with. So what's really important about this schematic too is to show, many people think of, maybe they think of Legionnaire's disease, well you might think, man, I've got healthy people that visit my facility. They're not at risk. These happen in hospitals, right? We hear about it, especially Wisconsin, in the news about hospitals. But it's really contradictory to that. It's actually those folks that don't have a plan, perhaps, and have had, that have complex building plumbing systems, or people might stay overnight, that might not be there for health care, but maybe are immunocompromised, that can be at risk. Is this surprising to anyone, or maybe you had read this in the CMS memo before? Did anyone catch in the news, it was in 2015, what happened in New York with cooling towers? You did? I see a few nods. So in New York, we'll be talking a lot about that standard later, but 12 people died from Legionnaire's disease, and it was from a commercial, or a building in New York City with a cooling tower that wasn't properly managed. So cooling towers can be a source, and we'll talk about, some other sources, but it's a kind of interesting fact. So now we're going to focus on traits of Legionella bacteria, and again, recognizing this is not going to be a fully technical microbiology discussion, so we'll do our best, and again, raise your hand if you have questions. But we'll also talk about how Legionella can spread in the environment, and the clinical features, so that the person that might be the kind of groups of people that are most susceptible to Legionnaires and other waterborne pathogen diseases. So here's our microbiome, just one slide of this. Legionella is an atypical gram-negative bacteria. There's 52 species and 70 serogroups. So maybe, has anyone done Legionella testing or received a lab report? And again, that's, the CMS does not say to test, so that's okay. So, what you might hear, we've heard some folks say is, well, I don't have the really bad Legionella, I've just got Legionella species, or, you know, it's not the one that's commonly causes disease, but what's most important here, that if you do choose to test for Legionella, based on having all other steps of a water management program in place, you know, never a good idea to test without a plan. You know that no matter the quantity or type, it's important to treat it, you know, with the same type of response action. So there is one type that can cause 80 to 90% of all cases. That's based on how it's monitored at a clinical level. So Legionella got its name. It was first discovered at the 1976 Legion Convention, so Legionnaires disease. And this was also associated with the cooling tower at a Holiday Inn. Yep, Holiday Inn down the street. So just like Javier described there, cooling tower close to the intake for the facility, people were exposed, and 221 people were diagnosed and 34 people died. It's really significant. So sources of Legionella, so it has to come from someplace, right? And if I'm in your shoes, I might be thinking, well, it's everywhere. And you're absolutely correct. So Legionella is ubiquitous. It's found in the natural environment. But when it becomes hazardous and a problem is when it's in a complex building plumbing system with factors that make Legionella growth more susceptible. And then you've got this susceptible host of the people using the water system that could be susceptible to disease. So yes, when you walk by a stream or waterfall, yes, there could be Legionella in there, but we're going to focus more about how it becomes a hazard as it intrudes, amplifies, and multiplies within a building plumbing system. So now that we understand that, most cases of Legionnaires' disease have come from non-healthcare facilities, it might be kind of interesting to look at how people use the water in a building system. So you've got, typically maybe 31%, if we're thinking about hospitals or healthcare, 31% restrooms, heating and cooling, office building, restrooms, heating and cooling, maybe landscape, all sources for that aerosolization and droplets that you can be exposed to, and water can enter your lungs as you breathe in. And then, of course, beverage manufacturers. We don't have any beverage manufacturers, so we'll skip over that part. And so this diagram, this shows, if you start here on where 1 is, you've got the little Legionella bacteria coming into a host, which is the amoeba. And you can see it starts to close up, and this is a stream of biofilm and water passing through the system. You can see the quantity. It very quickly multiplies, or I might use the term amplifies, within the amoeba and cell wall. You can see here, it's multiplied even more. And this process right here is called lysing, so breaking open. That's when Legionella becomes dangerous. It's here, when it's encapsulated within the biofilms and the cell wall of the amoeba, it may not show up as viable or living, but once the cell lyses open and these Legionella are dispersed throughout the plumbing system, that's when it will be detected as living Legionella. Factors, and I did talk to a couple of you today about treatment devices, and UV was one of them that we discussed with one of you here, and understanding that causes of amplification. And if I'm in your shoes, I'm thinking I've got my supplemental system in place, which is supposed to kill or control Legionella, but what else can have a contributing factor? What else might you want to look at in addition or as a substitute to a supplemental treatment device? And that's really understanding the temperature, water age, so reducing water age at the distal points, which definitely can contradict some efficiency initiatives. So it's really important to have that balance of efficiency and safety, because if you're too efficient, you might not be safe, or that maybe look like, low flow faucets installed everywhere throughout the facility that are reducing water flow, which increases water age, increases biofilms from growing, decreases disinfectant in the system. So, or maybe a water system that has all this flushing, these flushing programs that are, it's requiring the staff to run out and do all this flushing of all the fixtures and the showers and the water heaters, but that's not efficient. Maybe that's very safe and you're overdoing it, but then you lose that efficiency piece. So it needs to be done in parallel with each other. Systems can't be too efficient or too safe. You've got to really balance those with your resources available at your facility. But other things here, so temperature, that ideal growth temperature for Legionella is 95 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Legionella can grow up to 125 degrees when you start to enter the bacterial kill zone, and as cold as 65 degrees. So if you're thinking about if we're all in Wisconsin here, and most times water is being received into our facilities at about a little bit less than 65, right? Closer to 55, maybe 50 degrees in the cold winter months. So Legionella growth is more unlikely. But we think about how it enters the facility and maybe does not have Legionella, or it's dead Legionella, then goes, through a hot water system or a ice machine or softening. All those different, what we consider processing steps, can change the water quality. So it's really important to note that, what those processing steps are and how they can change the water and how those could contribute to increased risk of Legionella growing. So now on to transmission. So this is, let's see here. So if we think about, that cell, that picture, let's go back to it. We think about what Legionella does in a biofilm and how it needs to enter a host. That is the exact same way that in a person, jumping ahead, how the Legionella bacteria can enter the lungs, the macrophages and alveoli, and then infect a person and they could get Legionnaire's disease. So you can't get it from person to person. There needs to be two things to occur: the Legionella present in the water and a susceptible host. And the mode of transmission is through breathing the water in. So breathing those aerosols, or drinking the water and choking so it enters your lungs. So if all of you in the room here are healthy individuals who maybe aren't, these factors here are immunosuppressed, elderly, maybe current or former smokers are definitely more susceptible, cancer care patients, you've got a much lower risk versus those folks that fall into this category. That might be at an assisted living or a nursing home, or maybe in the ICU, or even at the jails and using showers that, if they're severely immunocompromised and there's Legionella present. Now, does this all make sense so far? I know that was a lot of microbiology and a lot of new information about bacteria that maybe you've never wanted to know about or thought you had to worry about, but are there any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Prior slide, you had a bullet point about scaling. Just talk a little bit more about scaling and its relationship to Legionella.
Sure, that's a great question. And so scale, Legionella it's a good growth environment for Legionella to grow. Sticky, slime surface, it's a, good environment. So on ice machines where they may have scale or, other fixtures, it can be a good sticky surface. And then, the water can pass through the scale and then have Legionella. Does that answer your question?
So it's part of the biofilm then?
Part.
From your perspective?
Yeah, I would say scale and biofilms, yeah. That's a good question. No problem. Yes,
So
Senator?
for the hot water systems, what temperature do you recommend that the storage tanks be set at?
Yeah. So it depends on, your code regulations. system. Healthcare, depending on what year your healthcare facility was built and if you made major plumbing modifications, that might put you in a certain code. But to be in that bacterial kill zone, that begins at 125, but you might need mixing valves, whether it's a Holby or an Armstrong braid right after the mixer, or mixing all of the fixtures. And what we would say, there's no, while 125 begins to be that bacterial kill zone, we work with lots of facilities who have hot water heaters set at 115. They don't mix down, they distribute it out, but they've got controls in place, water management program, verification procedures, and validation that supports that that data is safe. So it's more important about validating those temperatures to confirm your controls versus saying, I can't say here, everyone 140, go back, set it at 140, nothing, very unlikely for things to grow because you might not, that might not be feasible and you might really ruin your water heaters if they're not compatible with those temperatures. It's really about the data. That's a great question, thank you, Chris.
So
Yes.
how frequent would be validation?
That's a good question, and we would say, the frequency and methods are up to the water management team to decide. So that's not something, we can say, teams, we would, to validate, like I said earlier, validating without a plan, it's better to just not validate at all. Because if you don't have a plan in place and if the water management team understands the conditions that you're validating under, the data really doesn't mean much. So it's a water management team discussion. And ASHRAE 188, CDC Toolkit, and CMS do not say the test. And there's two ways to validate. It could be through clinical surveillance. Maybe you have an infection preventionist or a nurse in your facility that's monitoring pneumonia cases or the ones that would come to the hospital, or environmental validation of the water, so testing bulk water, collecting bulk water samples. Any other questions so far? It's a really great question. Okay. So now that we've learned about, Legionella bacteria, how that translates to Legionnaire's disease, we're going to be talking about the tools to set up processes in place to prevent it. That sounds okay, well. So like we said, so a sustainable water management program is one that is documented, optimizes the total cost, and improves safety and efficiency. So we use that really extreme example where maybe you change out all your fixtures, you reduce flow, you're really not using water. Maybe it's a LEED certified building or gold certified, whatever your certification is. Those are all really great things. But we've seen those facilities, and others that had attended our Smart Water Leadership Summit, we had somebody speak about this. It was a LEED certified building, but brand new. It was getting all these recognition and awards, and they found Legionella all over their building water system. It was too efficient, and let that to be unsafe. So I'm not here to tell you don't go find efficiency examples in water. You most definitely can.